How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem, Daf 40 of Masechta BavaBasra. Friends. Alright, I don't know, before Daf 40, what does it talk about? I guess like stuff. Alright, we're going to start in Daf Lamed Testament Beis, all the way at the bottom, the final line of Daf Lamed Testament Beis. Omer Rav, Omer Rav Nachman, Machoy b'fnei Shnayim. Oh. So it says Rav in the name of Rav Nachman that Macho, that if Shimon, right, Ruvain is on Shimon's property, and he's working at it, he's making a chazak or whatever, and Shimon says, wait, what's going on over there? This isn't Ruvain's property, it's my property. And so he says this. So says Rav in the name of Nachman that in front of two people, right? We had seen Machlokes yesterday, in front of two people, in front of three people. Rava says in the name of Nachman that Lemaise Macho is in front of two people, not three. Ve'ein tzorich lomar ksovu, and they could even write it down and record it without him deliberately instructing them to record it, because it's in his interest, right? Meaning, what's going on? Reuven is on Shimon's property. Shimon's like, wait, what's going on over here? And he says in front of witnesses, this field, for the record, this field does not belong to Reuven, it belongs to me, Shimon. So if the witnesses want to write it, if he doesn't instruct them to write it down, but they say, hey, let's write this down. Matov manoim, why not? Even if they weren't instructed to, but they write it down, so now it's documented. Givaldig. Modaya bifnei shnayim ben tzarich lomar ksovu. Say you have a scenario where Reuven is being forced to sell his property to Shimon, or to give his property to Shimon. What was it? Limkor v'litin. Okay. That Reuven is being forced against his will to sell a property to Shimon. So Reuven goes to witnesses before he signs on the document to sell his property to Shimon. He goes to witnesses and he says, by the way, witnesses, I'm right now about to be forced to sell my property against my will. I want you to know that this is against my will. I do not want to be selling this property. And then, because he says it in front of witnesses, in the hope that at some later point, they'll be able to corroborate and to say, yes, he had said in front of us that this property was he was being forced to sell it against his will, and hopefully he'll be able to retrieve his property. And they could record that, even if you didn't explicitly tell them to record it, they can record it, because he only stands to benefit from having written documentation of it. Now, say Shimon lent Reuven money, okay, and Reuven then admits that he borrowed money from Shimon, and he admits it in front of witnesses. Reuven admitted in front of witnesses that he owes money to Shimon. So in that case, they wouldn't just be allowed to write it down. He would have to instruct them to write it down, right? Because there's a difference between, once it's written down and it's official, then he basically he's on the line for it. Whereas if it's not written down, then he could claim that maybe he paid it back, or once there's a document, it makes it more difficult. Right? If Shimon provides a document, he's going to be on the line. So in that case, yes, Reuven admits in front of witnesses that he owes Shimon money, but they can only write it down if he instructs them deliberately. Yes, you can even document this and give Shimon the document. But if he doesn't say it, then they can't do it, because he doesn't stand to gain from it. He could potentially, could create challenges for him. Kinyan bifnei shnayim. If Reuven is makne something to Shimon in front of two witnesses, ve'eno tzorich lomar ksovu, right? The witnesses could record that Reuven it was makne something to Shimon. They could record that this transaction took place, and even if Reuven does not instruct them to record it. Now, Rav is going to ask in another minute, why can they write it down without any instruction, right? This isn't Zach Nadim Shlo B'Fanav. It doesn't benefit Reuven to write it down. Reuven's being makne something to Shimon? How does it benefit Ruvain that they'll write it down for him? V'kim shtaros b'shlosha and oichid kim, well not oichid, but kim shtaros is with 3, right? That if you have a document, right? I don't know, Ruvain, whatever, Shimon's got a document saying that, I don't know, Ruvain sold him his field or something, and there's witnesses signed on the document, but Shimon wants to make sure, right, maybe what if the witnesses die, what if they go traveling, and if he's going to have to, prove that this document is authentic, what do they do? They go to Bezdin, and they bring the witnesses to Bezdin, and the witnesses testify about the document before Bezdin that yes, these are our signatures, and then Bezdin basically writes down at the bottom of the document, yes, this is a valid document, and that way, if in the future Shimon needs to provide this document, it's already been vouched for and authenticated and verified. So that would be in front of 3 because they need to be a Bezdin. Right? Bezdin is verifies and validates the document, not witnesses. You need a Bezdin, so that's in front of 3. Amar Rava says, Rava ikashali ha kashali, that out of all of this list of things that require 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses, instructions to write down, non-instructions to write down, I have the following kasha, I kinyan echidami. What's pshat with this kinyan? Right? How can we say that if Reuven is makne something to Shimon in front of witnesses, the witnesses can write it down, even though Reuven didn't instruct them to write it down? By the other case, we were saying they could write it down memele because zachan l'adam shalei b'fanav. But this isn't a case of zachan l'adam shalei b'fanav. Reuven doesn't stand to gain from having these witnesses record that he was makne something to Shimon. So what's pshat with this kinyan? Echidami, what's pshat with the kinyan? Kimaise bezdin dami libay tlos. If we're saying that a kinyan, let's say he's makne someone with a kinyan sudar, so if a kinyan is like a maise bezdin, it's like something that right, that is done with a bezdin. Well then, what echidami ikimaise bezdin dami libay tlos. So if that's the case, then it should have to be done in front of 3, not in front of 2, because a bezdin is at least 3. Well, whatever, essentially. Ilo kimaise bezdin dami, and if it is not considered like a maise bezdin, well then amai enu tzarich loymar ksovu. Well, if that's the case, then it should be done in front of 2 witnesses. And why do we say that they can write it down even if he doesn't instruct them to? I mean, this doesn't benefit him to have them write it down. So boy, amai enu tzarich loymar ksovu. But the boy. Other pashta, after Rava asked the kasha, he then answered it, L'olam lab k'maisa bezdin dami. It is not considered like a maisa bezdin, therefore it's only in front of 2. Then how come they can write it down without him instructing them to do so? Because stam a kinyan is meant to, it's meant to be written down, it's official. Right? Rashbam points out that if he wanted to drag his feet, or in some ways, he wouldn't say, here, just pick up this handkerchief and it's yours, right? He's basically he's saying, yes, I'm being makneh to you, and he's makneh, and they make an official kinyan in front of witnesses. So that's kilu. It's considered official. They could write it down, record it, and that's that. They don't need to ask. Rabbi Rav Yosef the Ami Tarvayu. Rabbi Rav Yosef would say lo kasvinon moda'a elo aman delo tzayis dina. When at the top of the daf, we talked about this modah, right? That if Ruvain says to witnesses, I'm about to be forced to sell my property to Shimon, so we say, Rabbi Rav Yosef will say, lo kasvinu modah, that we don't write down, right? So we had said earlier that if Ruvain says to witnesses that he's about to be forced to sell his property, so then the witnesses could write it down. He doesn't even have to instruct him. They could simply write it down for him. It says Rabbi Rav Yosef that they would only write it down if Shimon is a person who is recalcitrant. He's a person who would not listen to the Bezdin. And therefore he wants to have documentation. But if he's somebody who listens to Bezdin, so what does he have to write it down for? He would listen to Bezdin, right? If he's an amenable person, so then let Bezdin paskin that Reuven can get his field back. So Elo Aman, whereas Abai and Rava say no, even for people like us, like Abai and Rava, who would of course listen to the psak of Bezdin, still, you would write, regardless of the stature of Shimon, whoever Shimon might be, the witnesses would still write down this moda'ah, because let's say you can't find the Bezdin or whatever it is, it's better to have this documentation. All right, fine. Amina Adoi, the Nardaeans say, Kol moda de lo ksivba onon yodinon bei be'onsa de flanyo lav moda he. Say the Nardaeans again. Kol moda, so any moda de lo ksivba onon yodinon bei be'onsa de flanyo, that we know exactly what the onus is. Right, that Ruvain told us that we're going to figure out exactly what the context is, but Ruvain told us that he was forced to do whatever it is that he had to do. So it says in the Nardaeans that they have to write not just that there was an onus, but we know exactly what the onus was. And if it doesn't say that we know exactly what the onus was, so then lav modahi, then it's not a proper modah. Modah demai, and what modah are we talking about? I de gita v'dematanta. If it's of a get, right, that Ruvain says to witnesses, look, I'm about to be forced to give a get, and it's against my will, and we're saying that they have to know exactly what the onus is, or say it's talking about a gift, right, that Ruvain says to witnesses, I'm about to give a gift, but you should know it's against my will. Well, if that's the case, then why do they need to know exactly what the onus is, right? Because in that case, generally speaking, if there wasn't a real onus there, so then he simply wouldn't give the get, right? Meaning, as opposed to, for example, a sale, right? Why does somebody sell something? He might sell something because he simply needs money. Right? So he gains, so by selling something, he gains money, he gets paid, he gains money from it. So maybe he was in a pickle, maybe he was in a difficult situation, he needed cash, and therefore he was going to sell something so that he can get cash quickly, but he didn't want to sell that thing. So maybe he's just going to go to witnesses and say, I'm about to be forced to sell something against my will. And he's really only doing that so that he can later get it back, because he's really just doing it because he needs the money. So he's going to wait until he gets, has more money, then he'll be able to buy it back or whatever. And he has this modah that really was against his will. So in that case, they have to know, it makes sense in that case to say that these witnesses have to know exactly what was so against his will about this case. What was the onus here that we would force Shimon, who bought it from Reuben, to give it back to him. So it would make sense that in that case, where maybe there's a reason why he has to sell something because he needs money, and by selling it he'll get the money. So if before he sells it, he says to the witnesses, hey, I'm only selling this because some terrible thing happened or whatever, because of some ones, well, they have to know exactly what the ones is, because otherwise he might just be kind of pulling shtick to be able to get it back, because he's really only selling it because he needs, he's cash strapped. But let's say it's a get. Well, if he didn't have a real onus, well, then he just wouldn't, if there wasn't anything crazy going on, and if he doesn't want to give the get, he just simply wouldn't give the get. Or if he doesn't want to give the gift, he just wouldn't give the gift. And therefore, from the fact that he is giving the get, and he's saying to the witnesses, look, I'm giving this against my will, well, that should be enough. Because if it wasn't real, if there wasn't any real onus, he simply wouldn't give the gift. He simply wouldn't give the get. Right? So just by saying that there's an onus should be enough for the witnesses. Right. So again, so modah demai, second line of the Gemara. What kind of this modah, this I don't know, telling to the witnesses in advance, in what context? Ida gita, right, about the ones. Ida gita v'dematanta. If we're talking about that he because of some kind of ones, he has to give a get or he has to give a gift. Well, galuya milsa ba'amahi, it should be enough for the witnesses to simply say, look, before giving the get or before giving the gift, he told us that there was some kind of onus. That should be enough to know that there was a real onus. Because if it wasn't a real onus, he simply wouldn't have given the get, or he simply wouldn't have given the gift. He doesn't get anything in he doesn't get anything in return for giving a get or for giving a gift. For selling something, he gets money. So maybe there was a reason why he sold it. Maybe there wasn't a real onus. Maybe he just sold it because he needed money. in which case I understand why we should have to have more details about this onus. Vidizabini, so if it is talking about that he sold something, in which case he gets money in return, and maybe that's why he sold it, and maybe we should question why, what exactly was the onus that he told the witnesses. But Rava says we don't write a modah for when you sell something. So in which case there's not going to be a modah there. So if that's the case, what would be the scenario where the witnesses would have to specifically write down what exactly the onus was? It doesn't make sense in the case of a get or in the case of a gift. And when it comes to a sale, we don't write apparently modahs for that. So the olam de zabine, no, really it is talking about a sale. Where am I? The olam de zabine, mode rava heicha de onis. But Rava, however, would admit though, would agree that in the case where there's like a real serious case of ones, well then you would be able to write down a modah even by a sale. And for example, like the maisa with the following orchard, there was Shimon lent Ruvain money. So Reuven gave Shimon his field as a mashkanta for 3 years, and then at the end of 3 years, you know what Shimon the son of Agan did? Omar, he says to Reuven, Imazaban li mutav, look, I want your field. Either you could sell it to me, ve'ilo, and if you're not going to sell it to me, then we'll do it the hard way. Kavishna l'shtar mashkanta, I'll hide the document of the mashkanta, v'amina l'kuchi biyadi, and I'll say, I bought it from you and I have a chazaka, and therefore, Reuven's basically stuck. He's basically being forced to sell his property to Shimon, because if he doesn't sell the property to Shimon, Shimon's just going to claim that it's his. So, ki agavno kasvina modah. So in that case, of that kind of an ones, so then Rava would agree that you would write a modah there, and in that modah they would write exactly the scenario with the what exactly the case is, that Shimon is basically squeezing him. All right. Omar Rav Yehuda says, Rav Yehuda, hai matanta tmirta lo magbinon ba. This was a gift, right? Matana, yeah. This hidden gift, Omar Rav Yehuda, hai matanta tmirta, a hidden gift, lo magbinon ba. You can't collect a hidden gift. What's a hidden gift? Omar Rav Yosef, the Amar Lu L'Saidei, that if somebody tells the witnesses, Zilu atmoru v'chazvulei, I want you to go and hide, and then, so I guess Reuven says to witnesses, I want you to go and hide and write this document, this gift document to Shimon. V'ikad Amr, those who say Amr of Yosef, Delo Amrlu teisvu b'shuko v'braise. Or it says of Yosef, a hidden gift is that if he doesn't explicitly say to the witnesses, I want you to sit out in the public, in the market, and write this gift to Shimon. Right? So my benai, what's an afkamina between if they davka hide or if he simply doesn't say, I want you to do it publicly? Well, what's the default? If you say that a hidden gift that is not a real gift, it's dafka when he says go and hide. So by default, he's not saying go and hide. So then it's a regular gift. But if you say that dafka, right, so long as he does not explicitly saying I want you to publicly write this gift to Shimon, so long as he doesn't explicitly say to publicly write it, so then by default it's hidden. So then by default it would be hidden, and it would be we can't rely on it. Omar Rava says, but a hidden gift, what do we call this? Matanta tmirta, can be a moda'a for a different gift. Omar Papa says, Papa adarava la befer shitmar. Okay, we're going to explain this in a second. It says, Papa, that which Rava said about a matanta tmirta being a moda'a for another gift, La befer shitmar, Rava never said that explicitly. El michla la itmar, but it was implied that there was once a ma'ase. What happened in the ma'ase? That ugaver those with kadushe Itza. There was a fellow who wanted to be Mekadesh, a fella. Amrle, and she says to him, Ikosabt li kulu nichsech havina lach. If you write to me all of your property, I will marry you. Oh, so romantic. Ve'ilo lo avina lach. And if you don't write to me all of your possessions, then I'm not interested in marrying you. Wow, she must really be in love with him. Oh. Also, kasve la l'chulu nichse. Oh, and look at this guy. Oh, he goes and you see what he does. He writes all of his possessions to the love of his life. I'm crying a little bit. It warms my soul. Also, break shisha, but this fellow's son. He had other things on his mind. And he says to his father, wait, whoa, 1 second, lovebirds. Before you write away all of your property to this, I guess my potential stepmother, think about me for a second. I want a Yerusha, So Omar Lu decided so quickly. This fellow says to witnesses, Zilu atmaru be'ever yamina. I want you to go and hide in a place called Ever Yamina v'chasvu lei, and to write to my son that I'm giving everything to him first. Also, the comment to Rava, so the case came before Rava. Amalu, and he says to them, Lo markon of lo markon. He says nobody gets anything. And the assumption was, how come neither the son nor the wife get anything? So Mandachaza Savar, so whoever was observing this figured, Mishum dahavi modor lachaverta. Because, so the document that was written where the guy says that he's giving everything to his son doesn't work because it's a matanta tmirta. He said to the people, go hide in a certain place and write the gift. It's not the gift that we would rely upon. But the people thought then that, right, as Rava said, that it's modor lachaverta, and because this fellow wrote this document bichlal to his son, implies that he doesn't really intend to sell everything to this woman, and he's only doing it so that she'll marry him. So therefore, the fact that he wrote this document to give everything to his son, we said it's not a valid gift because it was hidden, but it's enough to indicate that he also doesn't intend to give anything real, to give it really to this woman, and that is why Rava said, what does it say? Lo markana v'lo markana. So again, man dechaza saver mishum davi modal lechaverta. So the people who were observing, they figured it's because Rava's opinion is that matanta tmirta can be a modah for a different gift, v'loi, but that's not actually true. Hasam muchacha milsa demachmas onsa hu the kasava. The reason why she doesn't get all of his property is because it's simply clear that there's nothing with a matanta tmirta. It has to do with the fact that it's clear that he's really only giving it to her, so giving her everything so that she'll marry him, and that, at some later point he would like to recoup these things. He doesn't really want to give it to her. Avalacha, but generally, my nichale delikne or my lo nichale delikne. But if stam you have a matanta tmirta followed by a proper matana, so then we would not say that it is a modal lachaverta. We would not say, wait, we can't trust the proper gift because there was this hidden gift. No, the hidden gift, generally speaking, would be nothing, and the proper gift would be the proper gift. They asked, Stoma Mai. So getting back to the question from earlier, right? We had two Lashonos of Rav Yosef. One is that a matanta tmirta is davka if he says go and hide. The other Lashon was that davka, for it not to be a matanta tmirta, he has to say go do it publicly. If he doesn't specifically say go do it publicly, so then by default it would be a matanta tmirta. So what do we say? What do we do? Ravina Amar Lo Chashinan. Ravina says that that is not a good that by default it's not a good gift. Rav Ashi Amar Chashinan. Rav Ashi says that we assume that we have to be concerned that maybe Taka is a proper gift. Vilchsa Chashinan. The halacha is that we do suspect that right. So meaning right. So Ravina says we're not concerned that it's a matanta tmir. Rather, it's a kshera. It's a kosher gift. Rav Ashi Amar Chashinan. We have to be concerned that maybe it is a matanta tmirta. And the halacha is that we have to be concerned that it is a matanta tmirta and that it is not a good gift. All right, fine. Rashbam says something interesting, which is right. Therefore, you have to write in the document. This is what he said to us. I want you to write it and sign it out in public. Even though he only said write it. Basically, what he's saying is write a document like the Chacham wanted to be written. And okay, so it's Kilo, I guess he said go write it in public. Alright, so that was Daf Mem. Oh wow, Daf 40 of Masechet BavaBasra. It's interesting, right? Wow, we've already been learning about it. Feels like we just started learning BavaBasra, probably because it's so big. Like we're 40 pages into BavaBasra, but we're not even 25% of the way through the Masechta yet. So it feels like we're already in BavaBasra, but still kind of feels like we're still at the beginning. But anyways, yeah, it was interesting daf, different things that today that need to be done in front of 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses, what are scenarios, where the witnesses can write it down, even though he doesn't instruct them to. In what cases do they not write it down unless he instructs them to? And we learned about these moda'ah things, scenarios where somebody says to witnesses, before he makes a sale that, I'm being forced to do it, and what the halachos of that are. Interesting daf. Peace out.